All right, time for Shannon Vlogs number 33 with Those Books selection, The Wide Sargasso Sea. Yay! Hey everyone, it is Shannon. I'm continuing the Those Books challenge. Oh my god, I think I didn't write down which number this is. I'm pretty sure it's my 11th Those Books book. Yeah, Jungle Book was one of those books. So the Maltese Falcon was 10 and this was 11. So here we are almost about a year into the challenge and I'm on my 11th book. Woo woo! Now, the Wide Sargasso Sea gets onto those books list for being, let me see, the 94th in the Modern Library's 100 Best Novels list. It's also on the Time Best 100 Novels since 1923. What happened in 1923 that made their list start there? I don't know. That was just on the Wikipedia page. I don't, it's not one of the ones I'm following. Yeah, so this was published in 1966, but it's actually set in I think it's sort of 1840s to 60s. And it was written well before the time it was published, but it took a long time to get it to press. This is one of the titles that I found more challenging. Where to start? Where to begin? Well, experientially, in terms of reading, it was not hard to understand. I really enjoyed it. It's split up into different parts that are very distinct from each other, and I felt it was quite accessible in terms of and understandable. But it had a lot of themes in it and issues in it and stuff in it that I don't lean to when I'm making reading selections, which is often when books sort of fall into the important over enjoyable reading experiences. And so that made it a bit of a challenge, I would say, especially not especially first off, there was a lot of gender imbalances and inequality. That was a huge theme. Women were disempowered, or the protagonist was very disempowered, and pretty much didn't have access to her own resources or was be able to make any of her big life choices. And that really sucks. And I don't love like being in the world of that too much. Like, I understand that it's important to see, that now times are different, hopefully in most places, certainly not all places. So I recognize that. But again, it's hard as a reader to sort of be in that world and that mindset, to be in a space with the place with the person who can't do what they want to do. But although the main character of and Jeanette she's fascinating on so many levels. I really loved when it was from her perspective, especially when she was very young. That was, I think, my favorite part of the book, is seeing it from her perspective and her describing things. And they felt like a kid describing them, like they understand what's going on, but when they explain it, they don't explain everything. So it has this sense of mystery and danger, but you don't know why. So that was really fascinating, and I really got a lot from that. The other theme issue topic that is challenging to read is that the inequality. I don't. It's hard to tell when it was inequality or if it was simply prejudice and racism involved in this one. And it's set in Jamaica and Dominica for the majority of the book, and so there's lots of interactions where people are treated based on the color of their skin, or their parentage, as opposed to who they are as people. And so for me, that like I find that really challenging. Although I did think this book really represented it well. Like, I really felt like I know I appreciated it, but I find it uncomfortable. I find it uncomfortable when people are treated badly for any reason, especially and mostly for just being who they are. So that makes me uncomfortable. So therefore, I found reading about it uncomfortable. That being said, there's one character in one particular conversation about power that was just hands down one of the best things I've read, like, in a long time. So I really felt like there was some payoff. So, and I think sometimes you need to show that situation to have those powerful moments. So that was really interesting. So, but again, like it's my classic problem with classics about that are often women focused, is that it shows them in this disempowered state, and for me that's not interesting. Like the reason why I chose a female author and a mostly female protagonist, there's some dual protagonist stuff going on in this one which I'll get to a bit later, but was that I wanted to hear a woman's story. But sometimes it's sad when so many women's stories are about being disempowered, so that is always a challenge. Now I'm gonna like to talk a little bit more about the book. I'm gonna have to get into spoiler territory, and it's not so much about this. It is about this book, but it's one of those things that I imagine that most people who are familiar with literary fiction understand sort of the how this book came about and what it's referencing. But I didn't know, and I read the back and it said it, and I wasn't happy. So if you don't want to know any more about this book, it's hard because it's in reference to something that I can't say without saying. So if you don't want any more spoilers, then this is the time to shut off, and we'll see you next time. But if for those who have read it and or are pretty confident in what I'm going to say or don't care about spoilers, one of the strangest things about this book is that the character that it focused on, Antoinette, is actually the author decided to make this a prequel to Jane Eyre. Totally weird, right? Like a different author, she takes a character from Jane Eyre, sort of the mad woman in the attic, as they say. And I don't know if they use her name, they use the name Bertha in Jane Eyre for this, but this is the prequel origin story for the mad woman in the attic, aka spoiler for Jane Eyre. I guess I should have said spoiler for Jane Eyre before I said mad woman in the attic. I'm sorry. It's hard. The literary people are the ones who stuck with me, who already know this. But her character is Rochester's first wife. So that's who she is. So this is what happened to her. And to be honest, I find that interesting. It's an interesting way to start writing something, but I didn't want to know that before I read this, certainly, because when it gets to the stage where there's sort of crossover, I felt like, oh, I know what's going to happen, and this is just sort of filling in some blanks. And also, I didn't really understand how her character got from when she starts as a girl on the island and her upbringing and coming of age and all that kind of stuff. I didn't understand how she turns into that mad woman in the attic. Yes, I can point out specific things that happened that would get her really upset and stuff, but not to this point, not to the point of madness. I didn't understand it. I really liked her character, so I was really sad to see her go down this route and just sort of like be whatever. And on the flip side of that, like the character of Mr. Rochester is in this story, because he brings her from Dominica to, England. And I really didn't like the depiction of him in this story. That's not how I see his character. I can understand, again, like, him going from A to B, but that's not how I imagined him to be. And so, because he's really quite cruel, and that's not really how I see him as a character. So although I find it like an interesting, parallel or place to start, or, but it's kind of weird to have a prequel written by someone years and years later, a different author. Like, we do a lot of this now. There's a lot of reinterpretations and origin stories and all that kind of stuff. We do a lot of this now, but this was written in the 60s, but it was published in the 60s, but was written a long time before that. So that's kind of weird. So I don't quite understand how Antoinette became Bertha, and why Rochester was so cruel. Like, they give you reasons, but I found that really strange. However, I did love the first part of the story where she was younger and she was in Jamaica and her life there, even though there was lots of challenging, trying things, and it was very dangerous and mysterious and heartbreaking. I really got a sense of time and place. And then as the story went on, it was more about being disempowered and not having choices, and forced into relationships and not getting what you want. And for me, I find it uncomfortable to be in those places. And it wasn't too long, so it wasn't, you didn't have to be there for too long. It was very well written. But again, that's I feel my edge of classics getting like, yeah, that's why I don't read stories like this, is because they can upset me. But it was very well done. And as I said, there was one in particular, one really good scene, and it feels like a scene, like I can see it in my head. I was like, oh yeah, here we go, and it was awesome. So other people have other things that they find, like, that they're waiting for those key moments, so it was kind of nice to have one in this. And it was quite unexpected, so I found it very engaging. I understood it. I get why it's there, but I wouldn't have gotten a lot of the references in its overall general importance without reading up on Wikipedia. I wouldn't, like, after the fact, I wouldn't have gotten it just from reading it. So that's one of the challenges, reading books outside, like reading books on your own without having those references, without having someone to chat with about it, or so. But yeah, but it's a very engaging read. So there you go. Wide Sargasso Sea. I don't know what I'm going to read next for those books. I guess I'll have to look at the list and see what I got. All right, thanks so much for watching.